Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I will focus on the supplementary estimates, in particular on the defense spending that responds to the NATO requirement of increased defense spending. And first, let me thank Senator Laboucan-Benson for her provision of the information that we have, and Senator Marshall for her usual insightful analysis. As a member of the NATO Parliamentary Association, I was attending the recent spring conference in Dayton, Ohio, where it was clear we needed to do more in terms of defense spending. But I was also aware of the elephant in the room, the American government that appears to be intent on undermining the economies of all the other NATO allies. Our opportunity now, our obligation, is to increase defense spending while we build our own economy. As Senator Laboucan-Benson noted, budgetary spending will increase by $8.6 billion in comparison to the 2025-2026 main estimates. She outlined 5 requests from the Department of National Defense. The first includes a pay raise for the Armed Forces personnel for those below the rank of colonel, and that is a badly needed and overdue development. The other 4 points provide opportunities for manufacturing. They are defense R&D, aid to Ukraine, strategic military capabilities, and CAF equipment and infrastructure. The central point I want to raise today is to encourage the government to make sure that as much spending as possible is made within Canada for R&D, innovation, and manufacturing. And I'm certainly building on the comments that we heard earlier from Senator Colin Deacon with regards to innovation and manufacturing. Now, here are a few facts about the Canadian defense industry in Canada, as noted by the Canadian Association of Defense and Security Industries. The industry contributes $9.6 billion to the GDP of Canada. 49% of their sales come from exports. They invest $440 million in innovation annually. They cover 81,000 jobs. The industry is located in all regions of Canada and is composed of some 580 big, medium, and small enterprises, certainly ripe for growing. Canada's defense industry produces a range of equipment, including light armored vehicles, rifles, and ammunition. Let me highlight just a few specific examples of Canadian-made defense equipment. Rochelle, Canada produces light armored vehicles based in Brampton, Ontario. And as a side comment, when we look at the challenges facing our automotive sector, perhaps we can look at LAV manufacturing to help that sector. Magellan Aerospace produces rockets and flares. IMT Defense produces forged projectiles and specialized machining. HFI Pyrotechnics, Inc. produces pyrotechnic products. My call to the government is that they focus on defense spending as much as possible within Canada to build Canadian industry. Given the tariff threats from the U.S. and talks of the 51st state, I think we need to do 3 things. Buy Canadian whenever possible, build Canadian, invest in Canadian R&D. Colleagues, you may know that I've been recording a series of conversations with Canadians about Canada-U.S. relations. Today, I've posted a conversation with Daniel Tisch, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, my province. Let me quote him. On defense, our members in the sector welcome the positive signs in the news about defense investment that would benefit Canadian industry, reinforced this week in the Prime Minister's visit to the NATO summit. This is quite urgent because there's a risk of losing the industrial base to other countries that are also increasing their defense spending. Let me quote from Benjamin Bergen, who's the president of the Canadian Council for Innovation. The government's investment in Canada's defense will be a generationally missed opportunity if we don't also ensure that the money is used to build Canadian companies as vendors for our security needs. If innovators know that there are significant government contracts available for made-in-Canada defense solutions, That helps de-risk R&D for companies bringing cutting-edge technologies to market. If we are spending upwards of 2% of GDP on defense, we should not be satisfied with just buying products off the shelf. The government must be collaborating with the private sector players to co-develop the defense systems and technologies for the 21st century. Indeed, that's what every other leading country is also doing. So both these folks indicate that other countries are using defense spending for building their own industrial policy and industry in their countries. We must certainly do the same. When it comes to buying abroad, we need a quid pro quo approach. As an example, take the March 18th announcement, the purchase of $6 billion over-the-horizon radar system for the Arctic, which we purchased from Australia. We should build a purchase like that of a trade deal. We buy $6 billion from them, and they buy $6 billion from us of something that we produce. That's a win-win expenditure for both. While large sums are set aside for major maintenance and repair in the monies put forward, we must focus on manufacturing in Canada. This is key. I want to say clearly that we cannot be just the Maytag repairmen of the defense industry. We must strive to be the innovators, the intellectual property rights holders, and the manufacturers of defense equipment. Now, I accept that we do face a conundrum. On the one hand, the new spending to meet the NATO target has to happen soon. We have a tight and important target. On the other hand, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build our innovation and manufacturing sectors and create many well-paying, long-term Canadian jobs. As Prime Minister Carney has said, we need to build the strongest economy in the G7. So in closing, colleagues, I encourage departmental officials and ministers, especially those responsible for national defense, public services and procurement Canada, defense procurement, to go all out to ensure that we spend these billions wisely to build the Canadian economy and support good jobs for Canadians. In this turbulent world, we can make sure that our NATO commitments build the Canadian economy and create good jobs for Canadians. Thank you.
Senator Richards, you have a question.
Yeah, quick, and I'm sorry to be asking so many questions here. But we've given all this away before, Senator Cardozo. The Arrow we threw into Lake Ontario. AI we've given away. Gerald Bull and his system of cannons to put rockets, to put satellites into space, we denied him access, so he went and worked for Saddam Hussein and was murdered or was shot in Belgium. All of this happened under the watch of the last 3 or 4 governments, or before that with the Arrow in the late 50s. And I'm just wondering how are we going to change our whole idea of how to do things now when we didn't do it in the last 65 years?
Senator Cardozo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hope you don't take this wrong. I don't mean it flippantly, but I hope that the brilliance of people like you who push these ideas, that we all keep pushing these ideas. I think my hope is that we have reached a point where Canadian governments and Canadian industry have realized that we really need to take our intellectual property rights more seriously and need to take our manufacturing more seriously. I hope that we see all these things related to this massive new spending that we're going to do, and possibly more than the 2% that we're talking about here in terms of these supplementary estimates. And all I can say, God help us if we don't. I mean, it's really an opportunity. The 2 people I quoted both said if we don't do these things, we'll not only lose out because we lose out, but because everybody else is already doing it. So if we don't follow everybody else's example to use these funds to build their economy, then we're in trouble. But my hope is that we will see this competitive opportunity. My sense is when the Prime Minister talks about building the strongest economy in the G7, this is really a great starting point. Right here.
Sir.
And it has ripples that go well beyond just the defense industry, but deal with a large range of innovation and technology.
Thank you.
Senator Patterson.
Speaker. Senator Cardozo, will you take a question?
Sure.
Certainly conceptually, building capacity is about more than research and development. It's about long-term sustainable investment in a defence industry, which will require a complete change in thinking in Canada, because in order for any for-profit enterprise, they have to have sustainable contracts. Now, we certainly have heard about the defence industrial strategy that's being put forward. Now, Germany has tried that and put 100 billion euros against it to start. What would you like to see in any defence industrial strategy so we can move beyond R&D and have a truly sustainable defence future? Because this is a dividend that will pay off well beyond this session of Parliament.
Senator Cardozo.
I certainly don't have all the answers to your question, but I think your question is really the important one. And I think what you're saying, what you're challenging us to think big and to think long-term, realizing that we've got a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build long-term. I hope that those of us who are interested in this issue, whether it's at SECD, the committee that you and I are on, or other opportunities, that we keep raising this issue and keep making the point. I think we live in a slightly a side point. We live in a hyper information society where there's so many different things going on, and it's hard to keep a narrative strong and growing. So I think part of our challenge as senators that we use the opportunities we have, such as SECD, to continue to make the point that you're raising. Thank you.
Senator McFedrin.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Senator Cardozo, would you take a question? Thank you. In these many meetings that you've been in, many conversations that you've been part of, have you ever experienced a conversation that not only looks at the wonderful benefits of increasing defense spending in many ways, but has there ever been a question about what's going to happen as a result of the shifting of those resources on the defense side? Who's going to miss out? Who's not going to be supported anymore in society when there is such a massive shift of resources to defense?
Senator Cardozo.
I'm trying to think. I think that you raise a very important point, because we live in silos. And so the silos that talk about this sometimes don't talk about the social costs. But I think it's certainly the responsibility of all of us as parliamentarians who are here charged with responding to a wide range of issues. One of the things I see is, I don't want to say the trite, you help the economy and that helps social policy, which is true. But I also want to point out that when you look at helping industries, there are a lot of people employed through that industry. I was at a steel plant in the Toronto area a couple of months ago. Just somebody who had kind of attacked me on something I'd said on social media, and so I called him up. We got to know each other, and I went to see his steel plant, and we become friends. And it was interesting, as we were talking about various aspects, his entire plant was made of newcomers and people of color. So, and this wasn't defense. This was making steel parts for cars, which can certainly be used for light armored vehicles. But I think when we look at various industries, we'll see that they're multi-layered. And my hope is when we do that kind of thing, we'll see an industry that employs people who have come in from all over the world. We see we see a plant that is, I don't want to use the word racism-free, but certainly very diverse in its nature, and that a lot of the people had worked there very long. So we're very satisfied and happy. So I think that creating jobs is itself useful to deal with some of those issues, but there are a lot of those issues that don't respond to just economy, but do take public resources. And I think it's for us to make sure that we don't move away from the values that we have as Canadians.